Hello everybody. We're going to be starting our official units for A&P. Hopefully you've watched the welcome video and looked at the syllabus. Now, a lot of the material, like we talked about being a hybrid course, a lot of it's going to be covered in class, but there are some topics that may not be covered in class. So there's going to be videos available for you to learn the material. Even if you were in class and we covered it, you may want to go through it again. So they're going to be aligned with the PowerPoints that we do, and for each chapter there's going to be objectives. So we're going to be looking at chapter 1, which is Intro to Anatomy and Physiology. And essentially it's going to be setting us up with just the basics that we need to know as we go throughout the course. So this particular video is going to cover Objective 1 and Objective 2. And so in Anatomy and Physiology, it's important to understand the difference between the two. So if you are studying anatomy, what you are studying is essentially the parts of the body. You're looking at a bone, you're looking at a heart and identifying the chambers of the heart. You're studying the eye, things like that. And there's two different levels of studying anatomy. You have gross anatomy, which is essentially going to be big stuff. Okay, so macroscopic means big. These are going to be the things that we can see with the naked eye. So if you're studying a whole bone or you're looking at a brain, your dissections essentially are going to be a lot of your gross anatomy, because you're going to be cutting open the parts and just looking at them with the naked eye. But you can also study microscopic anatomy, and so where macro meant big, micro means small. And so these are going to be the small things that you cannot see with the naked eye, and they're going to require the use of a microscope. So if you're studying anatomy at the tissue level or the cellular level, a lot of times that is going to involve the use of a microscope. So physiology is looking at the function. So what do the parts do? How do they work together? You're looking at the chemistry and the physics. So the physiology is essentially going to be the function. So anatomy is the part and physiology is how they work. So as we go through the course, with every body system that we do, we're going to be looking at both the anatomy and the physiology. Anatomy is going to be a lot more memorization, whereas physiology is going to be understanding, the pathways, the processes, things of that nature. So first question, the location and description of bones in the skeletal system. If we're looking at the bones specifically, that would be anatomy. If we were looking at how the bones work together in a joint, that would be physiology. All right, so Objective 2 is going to be characteristics of human life. And so in order to be a living thing, there's just certain characteristics that an organism must display. And so to be a living, working, functioning human, there are essentially characteristics that you will always see. And so we're going to go into each one of these individually. So the first one is organization, and life is organized. If you think about the human body, it's an amazing working of parts. We have this organization from very small all the way up to very big. As a piece of matter, we are made up of atoms. Those atoms join to form molecules and compounds. Then we have cells, which is where life begins. Cells make up tissues, which make up organs, which make up the systems, which make up the whole organism. And so life is organized, and it can be very, very complicated as we move through that organization. And so one of the things we're going to do in this class is we're going to start small with the chemistry level, we're going to move up to the cellular level, and then we're going to get into the organ and the organ system level. And so it's important to know the different parts and how they interact. Our next characteristic of life is metabolism. And metabolism is essentially all of the chemical reactions that are taking place in an organism. A lot of times when we think about metabolism, we think about digestion and exercise. People will often talk about having a slow metabolism or a fast metabolism. But essentially it's all the chemical reactions. And we have two main types of metabolic reactions. We have anabolic and catabolic. Anabolic are going to build molecules, and catabolic are going to break molecules. Anytime we build, we're going to be storing energy. So if we're making proteins, we're building a muscle. And then catabolic are going to release energy. So like in the process of digestion, we're breaking down our foods. And so together, both the building and the breaking, both of those make up metabolism as a whole. Our third characteristic is responsiveness, and we see this on a day-to-day basis. If someone turns the light on, your pupils are going to shrink. If they turn the light off, your pupils are going to dilate. If you walk outside and it's 100 degrees, you're going to start sweating. If you're like me, you're typically always moving toward food. Or if you have the whole fight or flight response, if you get scared or if you get nervous, you feel the hair stick up on your arm when something just doesn't feel right. All of those things are going to be a response to your environment. So as the environment around you changes, as a living organism, you are going to respond to those changes. Number 4 is movement. We can move at different levels. We can move as a whole level, like if you wanted to go for a jog at the track, if you just wanted to walk to class, all of those things are movement. That's going to involve action at the joints and involving your muscles and your bones working together. You could have motion of individual organs, like your heart beating, or you could also have individual cells, like these little sperm that you see here in the video. And the 5th characteristic is development. So every person began as a zygote, and a zygote is essentially a fertilized egg. So sperm and egg come together, and that is the beginning of you. Now if you take a look at yourself today, you are an adult made of trillions of cells working together. All of those cells are not created equal. A neuron is going to be very different from a muscle cell. A muscle cell is going to be very different from a skin cell. And that's because differentiation is going to take place. So you start as one cell called a zygote, and then you go through a series of cell divisions. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, all the way up to millions and trillions. And in the process, the cells will become differentiated. And what that means is they become specialized. They go from being a generic cell, like a stem cell, to a cell that performs a very specific function, like a red blood cell or a muscle cell. You're also going to experience growth, which is just simply the increase in body size. So think about how big you were when you were a baby versus a toddler versus a teenager, all the way up to an adult. And so we continue to grow in size throughout most of our life. We also have renewal. You're constantly making new cells. Your cells do not live forever, and so we're constantly making new skin and new blood, and we can grow and repair and replace. And this involves a process called mitosis, which we'll be looking at in our biology unit. And then we also have reproduction, and reproduction can kind of be in 2 forms. We could have the reproduction of new cells, like for renewal, or if you're talking about reproduction in terms of making new organisms, this is going to involve a process called meiosis. And this is where you make sex cells, and then the sex cells are going to be what come together to form the zygote. So over time, you start as a single cell. Those cells differentiate, they grow, and then even as a functioning adult, you are constantly renewing those cells, making new ones, and then of course we can reproduce. And that just about wraps up Objective 1 and Objective 2. So just to kind of give you some visuals here, differentiation, you have just kind of generic, unspecialized cells that will become a very specific certain type. Growth is the increase in size. Renewal is making new cells by the process of mitosis. And reproduction is going to involve making new cells by meiosis, and those cells coming together in the process of fertilization. And so just kind of as a final quick review, let's kind of do our matching. So organization, that's the idea that we have from small to larger parts working together. Metabolism was chemical reactions. Responsiveness is when we respond to our environment. Movement could be at the joints or movement of individual cells or organs. And then development are all the different processes that we go through from zygote all the way to death. So there's our answers to our question, and hopefully we will see you again in video number 2. Oh, forgot these questions here. Mitosis is for renewal, and meiosis is for reproduction. And that's the end of objectives 1 and 2.